quarterback Deshaun Watson out for the year. The team says Watson has a displaced fracture in his throwing shoulder, new pain in that throwing shoulder, and what was later revealed to be a high ankle sprain.
We expect the surgery to go well and for him to be ready for the start of the 2024 season.
A few weeks ago, I appeared on this channel and said that the Deshaun Watson trade is the worst trade in NFL history. And although that may have been a stretch, I can now say definitively with the new information that we got, the Deshaun Watson trade is one of the worst trades in NFL history, if not the worst trade in the NFL since the Ricky Williams trade that was done on draft day. And I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to try to be as empathetic as I can be for the man's situation, but it's a little difficult to be. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all of that out of the way, break! So how do I know all this information about all these teams scattered throughout the US? Very simple. I purchased NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket is awesome if you happen to be living in a state where your favorite team isn't playing. In my case, I live in Los Angeles and I was born in Texas, so I'm a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan. Watch your favorite team's out-of-market Sunday afternoon games. You're no longer gonna have to sit idly by while your favorite team is playing, but it's not available on your local cable channels. The best part about Sunday Ticket is that it's on YouTube and YouTube TV and there's no 2-year contracts required. You can bundle and save on Sunday Ticket with YouTube TV to get 100 plus live TV channels, which is what I did. And right now they're really hooking us up with a discount. It's now 50% off for the rest of the season. Get it now by clicking the link in the description down below. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody?
My apologies if my voice sounds a little weird, guys. I got sick again.
I want to preface this video by reminding you guys that I'm a huge fan of Deshaun Watson's game. I mean, my content from 2020 to 2021 is still up. I think he is one of the most exciting players to watch in NFL history, at least when he had a Houston Texans uniform on. Things that this man was able to do given the circumstances that he was in, like Bill O'Brien trading DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson, and then Deshaun Watson somehow putting together his best season to date with his wide receiver one being Brandon Cooks, is nothing short of amazing. I mean, we don't talk about Deshaun Watson's 2020 season enough, where he threw for over 4,800 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. And despite that, the Houston Texans only won 4 games. Unfortunately, whenever it comes to Deshaun Watson, people don't remember how phenomenal of a football talent he was from the moment he stepped foot into the NFL. From his dominant rookie season throughout the first 6 games until he suffered an injury, to, of course, his final season with the Houston Texans. Unfortunately, whenever you say Deshaun Watson's name, there are 2 negative aspects of his life that come up. One, the allegations levied against him, which we've made plenty of content on in the past, and I'm not going to dive into now. And 2, how the Cleveland Browns gave up the entire farm to try to trade for him. In the case of Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns, during the 2021 offseason, Deshaun Watson was very fed up with the Houston Texans organization. They reportedly told him that they were going to consult him on all personnel decisions, which was a huge theme that offseason, with multiple quarterbacks that were frustrated with their teams, like Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, and Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. And then right behind Deshaun Watson's back, they did something that pissed him off, which was once again pursuing executives from the Bill Belichick coaching tree, or in this case, the management tree. A few years prior, the Houston Texans attempted to pursue Nick Caserio, which at the time was blocked by Bill Belichick. But when they were successful in getting Nick Caserio during the 2021 offseason, Deshaun Watson was once again frustrated because they didn't really consult him on the situation. He tweeted out his frustration in the situation and then deleted it and then demanded a trade. Very shortly after, the allegations would get levied against him and he would be out of football for the entire 2021 season, where the Houston Texans employed Dave Culley as their head coach. Now, the 2022 offseason was very big for Deshaun Watson because at that point, the criminal charges against against him were dropped. They were just civil cases at that point, meaning that he was not going to see any time behind bars. And as a result, Deshaun Watson began to court teams. And the teams that he was meeting with were all teams in the NFC South except for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He met with the Carolina Panthers, and that made a lot of sense because he went to Clemson and he was a hometown hero in Clemson. He visited the Atlanta Falcons because he grew up as a Michael Vick fan. And then he eventually met up with the New Orleans Saints. Through it all, the Cleveland Browns attempted to pursue Deshaun Watson, and their first attempt was unsuccessful. Deshaun Watson told him that he did not want to play for him. And from the Cleveland Browns perspective, they've been consistently trying to find their franchise QB ever since returning to Cleveland, and there just hasn't really been a lot of consistency, and they probably had their best quarterback to date in the form of Baker Mayfield. Now, I remember at the time making content on Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns and saying that they're in a very unique situation because Baker Mayfield pretty much gave him 2 good seasons and 2 bad seasons. And both of the bad seasons had a very legitimate rationale as to why he wasn't successful. His sophomore season, they had a head coach that wasn't qualified to be a head coach in Freddie Kitchens. And then in his final season with the Cleveland Browns, he played through a hurt shoulder. But unfortunately, the Cleveland Browns already made their decision. They decided not to sign their number 1 overall pick from 2018 and pursued Deshaun Watson instead. This resulted in Baker Mayfield posting a very long, heartfelt goodbye to Cleveland and eventually demanding a trade, which we have a video on that coming out in a couple days because his redemption is remarkable and it's something that we definitely want to spotlight a little bit. At this point, you know what happens. Deshaun Watson would switch course the moment the Cleveland Browns said that they would give him a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract, and they gave up first-round picks in 2022, 2023, and 2024, in addition to a third-round pick in 2023 and a fourth-round pick in 2024 just to get Deshaun Watson. Now, this was paired with the fact that Deshaun Watson would get suspended for 11 games in his first season with the Cleveland Browns, and when he did return for those games with the Cleveland Browns, he did not look like his old self. I mean, there was no zip on the football, people were saying he was rusty, and for the most part, we decided to write that season off. And then came this past year, where there were no excuses anymore. Deshaun Watson had a full year with the Cleveland Browns to acclimate, there was no suspension this past year, and the stakes couldn't have been more higher. You see, Deshaun Watson's cap hit was about to affect the Cleveland Browns significantly. They restructured his deal to make sure that this year his cap hit was going to be $19 million, but over the next 3 years, his cap hit is going to be about $64 million. And the significance of that is Deshaun Watson's entire team might become significantly weaker, and the Cleveland Browns' very legitimate Super Bowl window will be closed shut once Deshaun Watson's cap hit takes effect. The incredible part about the Cleveland Browns this season is the fact that they've been winning games primarily on the back of their defense. Deshaun Watson has had a very pedestrian season, but whenever he's played, he's had a winning record. But if we're being honest, the Cleveland Browns aren't necessarily winning games because of Deshaun Watson. They're winning games because of their ferocious defense. Through it all, any Deshaun Watson fan would be able to tell you that he does not look like the same player that he was in Houston as he is in Cleveland. My good friend Brett Coleman responded to this tweet by Emmanuel Acho, and I think he hit the nail on the head here. Acho went out and gave his hot take, saying that there isn't a Browns quarterback in the past 30 years who could have made some of the game-winning plays that Deshaun Watson made. Vintage Deshaun is back, showing this clip of all 22 footage where Coleman clapped back, saying it's been 30 years since the Browns had a quarterback that could throw a curl inside against a quarter half. Acho responded by just giving a bunch of buzzwords. With that accuracy, anticipation, and ball placement, then escape the pressure of an unblocked first-round pick blitzing Kyle Hamilton, you tell me who could have done it. Coleman would respond with this clip of Baker Mayfield doing the exact same thing and calling out Acho for cherry-picking a few good plays from Deshaun Watson. And the main reason I'm bringing this up is this is the tweet that I ended up retweeting, saying what I struggle with the most on this is you have a guy getting paid $230 million who went up against the same defense CJ Stroud faced in week 1 in his first ever start behind a 80% backup offensive line. CJ Stroud still looked better, and you can't get paid like Patrick Mahomes but win like Kenny Pickett. And then he showed off some of the stats between Stroud and Deshaun Watson. And in the past game that Deshaun Watson played in the first half, it seemed like he struggled mightily. And once again, people were tweeting about how much of a mistake that the Deshaun Watson trade was. was. And then he comes out in the second half and plays nearly perfect. The reason? Because the Cleveland Browns stopped throwing the football downfield. It worked, but it's not the reason why you brought Deshaun Watson here. There was some questions about whether or not Deshaun Watson's shoulder was okay all season long. Some people were even questioning whether or not he was giving the shoulder excuse just so he could sit out of games because he has a fully guaranteed contract. If you remember this from Brady Quinn.
Everyone else's the medical opinion just clears him pretty much. I mean, it's like, well, it's kind of similar to this. You get a killer who gets a trust fund, right? $230 million. Then he's like, hey, you want to go out and get a job? He's like, not really.
No.
I've got $230 million coming. I'm good. That's what it kind of feels like.
Now, I am never, ever going to accuse any human being of faking an injury because I think it's just a sleazy thing to do. I can understand the argument. Of course, he has a fully guaranteed contract. Why would he go out there? I don't think that's what he's doing here. I personally can't pinpoint when the shoulder issues began because from the moment Deshaun Watson put on a Cleveland Browns uniform, it seemed like he was a shell of his former self. And now, here's the worst part. Deshaun Watson's season is over, and this means that the Deshaun Watson experiment was officially a failure. So check this out. Adam Schefter announced today that Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson will undergo season-ending surgery on a broken bone in his throwing shoulder. People are joking about this, saying, why do bad things happen to good people? Oh, wait. So Tom Pelissero follows this up saying that quarterback Deshaun Watson wanted to be shot up and played through the injuries, and he sought multiple medical opinions per sources, but doctors were clear. If he got hit again in the same spot, the shoulder could fall apart. Now surgery awaits, and his 2023 season is over. The Cleveland Browns gave a statement on this, saying Deshaun Watson underwent magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, which, by the way, you don't have to say, you can just say MRI, but anyways, Monday on 2 injuries sustained on different plays in the first half of Sunday's 33-31 win over the Baltimore Ravens. Imaging on his left ankle revealed a high ankle sprain. In addition, post-game, Deshaun Watson notified our medical staff of a new discomfort in his right shoulder that he felt after a hit in the first half. An MRI of his right shoulder revealed a displaced fracture to the glenoid. Despite performing at a high level and finishing the game, after the consultation with Browns head physician James Voos, an industry-leading shoulder specialist, Neil Elatrash, which is the person that did Aaron Rodgers' Achilles surgery, which, by the way, Dr. Neil Elatrash is having a year. Oh my God. It has been determined that this injury will require immediate surgical repair to avoid further damage. Deshaun will be placed on season-ending injured reserve, and a full recovery is expected for the start of the 2024 season. So on one hand, you might be wondering who is going to be replacing Deshaun Watson. It's Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I know Browns fans are going to say, oh, but he was good in the preseason, but he sucks now. Understand that DTR didn't really get any reps with the first team going into his only opportunity with the Browns. So this time he's actually going to have the opportunity to prepare with the first team. And I'm excited for this young man to get his chance. Maybe it's because I'm biased towards UCLA players because, well, I went to UCLA growing up. But if we're really being honest, the Deshaun Watson trade is now a failure. There's no way that they can win a Super Bowl with him under center. This was Deshaun Watson's window of opportunity. He had a $19 million cap hit last year, and now he has a $64 million cap hit for the next 3 seasons, meaning the Cleveland Browns are just going to get worse and worse from here. The worst part of this situation is the Cleveland Browns had the best backup quarterback in the NFL on their roster to start the season, and they traded him to the Arizona Cardinals in the beginning of the season, who is currently doing wonders for the Minnesota Vikings, and this situation just sucks all around. I mean, if you're a Houston Texans fan, you must be cheering for joy because you hold the Cleveland Browns first round pick this year, and it's your only pick this year. I mean, the Houston Texans just gave us a masterclass in asset management. They sold high at Deshaun Watson's value, following his best season to date, trading him for a gigantic trade package, and then entering a rebuild. They struck gold with CJ Stroud, who is in year 1 of his rookie scale contract. They have assets coming in for the future. I mean, that's how they were able to get CJ Stroud to begin with, and then trade up to the number 3 overall pick to select Will Anderson Jr., who is having a remarkable season for a rookie, by the way. And now you just have to focus around building CJ Stroud, hoping that the draft picks you took on defense pay out in the form of Derek Stingley Jr. and Will Anderson, and you actually have a Super Bowl window that's open for the next 4 years. Now, the Cleveland Browns have have done fine without Deshaun Watson so far. It's just unfortunate because this year was supposed to be the Browns' year. This was Deshaun Watson's best opportunity to win a Super Bowl. And unfortunately, he got injured and he's out for the season. By the time he comes back, he's going to have this gigantic cap hit. But if you're the Cleveland Browns, there's some hope for that draft pick improving. Now, I don't necessarily know how likely it is because the Browns defense has been awesome. And Kevin Stefanski is an amazing coach that has been able to get the Browns to a winning record no matter what his circumstances were. I don't think this is going to really affect the Browns for another year because they're going to have some very difficult decisions that they need to make this offseason as a result of paying Deshaun Watson the amount of money they did. Again, I want you guys to know, man, I'm a huge Deshaun Watson fan. I mean, on the football field, but I'm a huge fan of the way he plays football. And in years past, we've seen the New Orleans Saints create $165 million in cap space over 2 years to cover Drew Brees' hit towards the end of his career. The Philadelphia Eagles have always been really good at contract restructures over the past 5 years, following Carson Wentz's horrible deal in 2019. And hell, they even made it to the Super Bowl during that window. They pretty much have some very difficult decisions that they need to make in the form of Nick Chubb, Grant Delpit, Zadarius Smith, Anthony Walker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and Greg Newsome. All very difficult decisions that need to be made in regards to whether or not these players could be retained, considering their difficult salary cap situation. Once you start taking apart that defense, obviously next year, your defense isn't going to be what it is this year. And it's all because you went all in, gave up 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a fourth-round pick to get the guy that you thought was your QB of the future. If there's a lesson that NFL teams should learn from this, it's never overpay your quarterback or never overpay to trade for a quarterback. It never ends up working. Unless if you're the LA Rams, which in the case of the LA Rams, yeah, I guess you could say that worked, but they didn't extend Matthew Stafford and make him the highest paid QB in the NFL after they traded multiple first-round picks and Jared Goff for him. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about this, man. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.